Ah, so when I was growing up, this Bible story, whenever it got preached on, um, focused a lot on basically the theological implications, the confession of faith. Do you believe this? Belief in the face of doubt and everything. And I still see that. I think that's a valid way of looking at this story. But as most of you know, I'm a hospital chaplain, and Um, I was reading this passage for the first time. I think this is the first time when I got asked to preach on this. I think it's the first time that I have read this story since becoming a chaplain, and it hit me totally differently. I'm like, oh, because it says several times, I love this translation that we use today, that it says Jesus was disturbed. And yeah, it's disturbing. It is upsetting in the deepest way to confront death, whether you're confronting your own or you're confronting that of a loved one, or you are in the room with the person who is losing it because their loved one just died. And that's the space Jesus is in this story. And I was relating a lot to Jesus in this story as I read it. I feel like I'm not even going to try to bridge the gap culturally in terms of what death meant, how it was responded to, stuff like that back then versus now. I'm not even going to. It's too big of a task. We don't have time. I'm not an expert on it anyway. But in terms of how it speaks to us, I feel like in Western, at least, Euro American culture, and probably in many other parts of the world as well, I would guess. Death is kind of the dirty secret. I see that a lot in the medical setting. Medicine is definitely seen as something that is meant to fix problems, and it's seen as sort of a failure if someone dies. I see it in a theological lens as well, where, you know, Mary and Martha are coming here and telling Jesus, if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. Which kind of gets borne out by the text. Like eventually Jesus shows up and Lazarus comes back. So they're not wrong. Um, but presumably Lazarus ended up dying again someday. Like eventually, whether it was this time or further down the road, like that's the thing, guys, is we're mortal. We all are. We're all headed that way. We're all headed there. Everyone we love is headed there. Everyone we've met is headed there. And that's a deeply, deeply uncomfortable reality to confront. It's so disturbing. And like the existential dread, if you think about it, can come rolling in, depending on especially the headspace you're in when you contemplate it and stuff. But as people of faith, many of us do. We don't talk a lot about afterlife in my experience of Mennonite circles, but it is part of our confession of faith, and I have had so many conversations as a chaplain where sometimes when sometimes when someone has just lost or is about to lose a loved one, they will kind of grasp at, well, I know they're going to be with God in heaven. I know it's going to be okay. I know we'll see each other again. And sometimes when I hear people say that, it's out of desperation because it's like this can't be the end, and they need something comforting to hold on to. And it's maybe not coming from a place so much of conviction, so much as like hope, and aspiration. And I hope this is true. I want it to be true. And sometimes that can be pretty cold comfort. But other times I encounter people where there's a piece to how they confront loss where it still hurts. And um and there's also an acceptance and a level of finding comfort in this is the way things go. This is the way of things. And ultimately, like from the big picture, we're not meant to live forever. The world wouldn't really work if we lived forever. Like it wouldn't it doesn't make sense. It's not how nature works. It's not how the world we live in works. And so there's this bizarre, like I feel like death is kind of the ultimate disruption to how we experience the world because the big picture and the immediate moment are so different. It's kind of like how forgive me if this is a weird analogy, but I was thinking about this where I'm like, it's kind of like how like sex and childbirth are related, but like childbirth's very unsexy. And it's like, how are these how does one come from the other? I like what on earth? Like it's kind of reminds me a bit of that, where like, where where it's kind of like love and grief are one and the same, and how can that be? Because grief can destroy us. It does. I think it does destroy us, at least for a while, at least in the moment, hopefully not long term. But like, boy, when you lose someone you love or lose, it's not just about death, but other losses too. Like, grief will rip you to pieces. And it's also related to the best things in life. It's like intimately tied to the very best things in life. And I was really moved as I read this story about how repeatedly we are told that Jesus loved these people. He loved them. He knew them. He was moved by them. And he kind of meets each person where they're at, which again is a very chaplain thing to do. I loved that when I noticed that like Martha comes in wanting to like talk about it from a theological perspective. Let's talk about what I believe, what this means. And Jesus is kind of like, okay, let's have that conversation. And so they engage on that level. And then she leaves, and Mary comes back and just collapses. And Jesus falls apart with her, which I really love. Because that's very loving and that's very real. And that's probably exactly what she needed. And it shows the humanity and the genuineness of like, if we take, again, bunch of theological cans of worms getting opened up in this story that I'm glossing past because, but like if we take it that Jesus is God or represents God or somehow stands in for God in this story, he's not above her sorrow and he's not unmoved by Lazarus's death and he's not skipping ahead to presumably Jesus knows presumably that like it's going to be okay. Like Lazarus is we're going to have dinner with him tonight. Like it's going to be okay. But like but she doesn't know that and she like and even the fact that he's going to be okay doesn't mean it's okay now. Like the fact that it's going to be okay someday. That's the thing with afterlife talk is like, okay, great. I'm glad that there's that hope that we can look to. And also, in the moment, ah, 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 like, even as a chaplain, there's other chaplains in the room with me right now, and I would love to hear how they take it. But like, even though I have attended hundreds of deaths, I have seen so many people collapse and fall apart in the moment that their loved one passes away. And you know what? It's still gut wrenching, even though I do have a deep seated belief that like somehow it is going to be okay eventually. Like that's my personal belief, but like it kind of doesn't make it easier. Kind of doesn't make it easier. Um, so I think this passage is very much about death and love because well, because it is, because it's about death and love. Um, I'm not even following notes. I did prepare stuff, you guys, I promise. But like, I'm just in the moment. I'm feeling just moved to just reflect with you guys on this. Is that like the classic question of like, how could a good God allow such terrible things to happen is a valid question. It is the question. It is a very real question. It is the one that breaks people's faith. I have seen it break people's faith. I have seen it break people's hearts. And also, like, any faith that we have, any belief that we have, any way that any framework we build for finding meaning and hope and security that we need in life to get by needs to account for the reality of death, needs to, because it's coming. It's coming. It's here. It's easy to not think about, but the more we don't think about it, the more that when it comes, it's we can't handle it. If we haven't made room for it along the way, if we haven't accounted for it along the way, when the moment comes, mm-mm, not good, not not okay. It's painful enough if you are emotionally and spiritually prepared and relationally prepared. And I don't know that Jesus even makes any attempt in this story to resolve why he didn't show up earlier. Like, why didn't he show up when he was sent for? Like at the very beginning, hey, Lazarus is really sick. They need you to come. And he's like, okay, I'll be there in a few days. Like and then later he's just like, yeah, okay, let's go now. Like, I don't like that. I don't like I'd be pissed. I'd be so angry. I think the sisters are angry. I think they're really upset. I think their trust has been betrayed by someone that they love, someone they trust, and someone that could have made a difference and didn't. And that's real. That's real. And Jesus doesn't really try to account for that. He doesn't explain why. Well, he kind of does vaguely. He's kind of like, it'll be glorifying to God. And I'm like, ugh, ugh. I honestly don't like that he says that. He did. Let's talk about it later. But like, but but he shows up and he stays and he doesn't rebuke them for being angry and he doesn't tell them to stop crying. He cries with them. And if that's the image of God that we get as we go through life, contending with the reality of loss and death and sorrow and suffering, we could do worse than the image of a God who loves us and shows up. I don't know why he's not making everything okay now. I don't know. I don't know. It's an important question, but I don't think there's a really satisfying answer to it. Not when your loved one's dead. I'm not trying to be funny, you guys. I don't know why it keeps coming across that way. I'm really not, but I don't know, a couple times maybe. But um, this, like this this week alone, this past week alone, I had a patient who was dying terribly, slowly, painfully, terribly, wasn't ready, nothing to be done. And she, to the last moment that she was able to speak, was like, I'm trusting in God. I'm counting on God. I'm counting on God. It's going to be okay. He's going to get me through this. I have so much faith. And then after she was no longer alert and no longer able to talk, her husband was like, you guys all think she's going to die, but you don't understand. She's like, we're trusting in God. God can do a miracle. He's done miracles before. We're counting on it. She didn't make it. And that's, mm, it's tragic. It's really, really tragic. It's really tragic. Um, and it happens so often. It happens so often. I don't know why God didn't show up. I used to actually be on it This is, I've never, I don't think I've ever admitted this to any of you. Back in my Pentecostal days, like 10 years ago, I used to, my church had a resurrection team, is what they called it. And it's because, yeah, that face you're making, Melba? Exactly. Exactly. I agree now. It's weird to look back on. It's weird. But they had kind of looked through the scriptures and had developed this theology that, like, well, everything that Jesus did we should be able to still do, and there's theological basis for that, and I get that and everything. And so they went, well, it'll never happen if we don't try. So they put together a resurrection team, and they were like, whenever someone dies in our community or families or whatever, like, we'll have a team that are prepared to go and show up and pray for them to be resurrected. I was on this team, you guys. Never saw it work. Never saw it work. Um, but like, the sad thing about it is that, like, I don't want to discourage anyone from having faith and hope. And sometimes God does show up and heal people. That's the other weird thing. Lazarus ended up being okay. I've occasionally seen patients that came back from stuff that, according to medical wisdom, should not have been able to. And it does happen now and then. I have no clue why. No idea why. Most of the time it doesn't. So we kind of need to live with the reality that the reason I mentioned about the resurrection team is that, unfortunately, people at that church, I think, handled suffering and death worse than any other community I've encountered, because it was all based on an outcome. It was, their faith was very, God's gonna do this, and we don't get to say what God's gonna do. We don't get to say that. I am all for faith and hope. Sure, yeah, but our faith and our hope cannot ultimately rely on an outcome, on any specific outcome that we want, especially one as unavoidable as death. So, pastorally, I felt like it was important for me to take this opportunity to lead us in a little meditation together, because I am firmly of the opinion that we need to be contemplating death. I think it's very important to contemplate death and its reality as part of our lives. And thinking about it, when contemplating it, wrestling with it, letting the pain and the fear in a safer environment when you're not at the moment that it's happening, I think is crucial for us emotionally, spiritually, in every way. In the early centuries of the church, Christians actually used to pray not to die suddenly, not to die unexpectedly. They didn't want a quick, unexpected death the way that I hear a lot of people talk about wanting these days, because it sounds less painful, which is probably true. But it was seen as a blessing to be granted the gift of having time to prepare yourself spiritually, emotionally, ask for forgiveness, give forgiveness, set things in order. That was seen as a gift and a blessing. And in order to do that kind of preparation, we need to acknowledge death is coming. It's coming. We gotta prepare for it. So, to wrap us up, I'm going to lead us in a quick meditation. Quick meditation, is that a thing? And bit of a, anyway, whatever. I'm drawing from a set of meditations called the Five Remembrances by Thich Nhat Hanh. He comes from the Buddhist tradition, and I don't see, not that people in this church are particularly bothered by interfaith kind of approaches to things, but like, I see a lot of biblical wisdom in his words. And so I invite all of us to take a few slow, deep breaths. If this meditation ends up getting uncomfortable or scary or overwhelming, first of all, take care of yourself, do what you got to do. But remember that you're loved. Remember that you are loved, and right here, right now, you're alive. You are not alone. We are here. God is here. The Spirit is here. So I just invite you to take a few deep breaths as I lead us in these 5 basically statements. I'm going to say each one um, and allow a few breaths as we just meditate on each one. And then we'll wrap up, okay? I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I am of the nature to have ill health. I cannot escape ill health. I am of the nature to die. I cannot escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. I inherit the results of my actions of body, speech, and mind. My actions are my only true belongings. Let's take one last slow, deep breath together. You are loved. You are so, so loved, and you are not alone. And we are mortal. Amen.